fit for dinner, in a condition of luxurious ease, business ever, that day's load of anxiety laid aside, his cuticle, as he delighted to talk, cleansed and polished, nothing more to do or think of until the next morning, he might now go and dine, and get drunk with a safe conscience. Besides, if he does not get dinner now, when will he get it? For, most demonstrably, he has taken nothing yet which comes near in value to that basin of soup which many of ourselves take at the Roman hour of bathing. No, we have kept our man fasting as yet. It is to be hoped that something is coming at last. It does come. Dinner, the great meal of coena, the meal sacred to hospitality and genial pleasure, comes now to fill up the rest of the day, until light falls altogether. Many people are of the opinion that the Romans only understood what the capabilities of dinner were. It is certain that they were the first great people that discovered the true secret and meaning of dinner, the great office which it fulfills, and which we in England are now so generally acting on. Barbarous nations, and none were, in that respect, more barbarous than our own ancestors, made this capital blunder. The brutes, if you asked them what was for dinner, what it was meant for, stared at you and replied, as a horse would reply if you put the question about his provender, that it was to give him strength for finishing his work. Therefore, if you point your telescope back to antiquity about 12 or 1 o'clock in the daytime, you will descry our most worthy ancestors all eating for their very lives, eating as dogs eat, viz., in bodily fear that some other dog will come and take away their dinner. What swelling of the veins in the temples! See Boswell's Natural History of Dr. Johnson at dinner. What intense and rapid deglutition! What odious clatter of knives and plates! What silence of human voice! What gravity! What fury in the libidinous eyes with which they contemplate the dishes! Positively, it was an indecent spectacle to see Dr. Johnson at dinner. But, above all, what maniacal haste and hurry, as if the fiend were waiting with red-hot pincers to lay hold of the hindermost! O reader, do you recognize in this abominable picture your respected ancestors and ours? Excuse us for saying, "What monsters!" We have a right to call our own ancestors monsters, and if so, we must have the same right over yours. For Dr. Southey has shown plainly in the Doctor that every one having 4 grandparents in the second stage of ascent, each of whom having 4, therefore 16 in the third, and so on, long before you get to the Conquest, every man and woman then living in England will be wanted to make up the sum of my separate ancestors. Consequently, you must take your ancestors out of the very same fund, or, if you are too proud for that, you must go without ancestors. So that your ancestors being clearly mine, I have a right in law to call the whole kit of them monsters, quod erat demonstrandum. Really, and upon our honor, it makes one, for the moment, ashamed of one's descent. One would wish to disinherit oneself backward, and, as Sheridan says in the Rivals, to cut the connection. Wordsworth has an admirable picture in Peter Bell of a snug party in a parlor, removed into limbus patrum for their offenses in the flesh, quote, cramming as they on earth were crammed, all sipping wine, all sipping tea, but as you by their faces see, all silent and all d.d. How well does that one word describe these venerable ancestral diners, all silent! Contrast this infernal silence of voice and fury of eye with the risus amabilis, the festivity, the social kindness, the music, the wine, the dulcius insania of a Roman coena. We mentioned 4 tests for determining what meal is and what is not dinner. We may now add a 5th, viz., the spirit of festal joy and elegant enjoyment, of anxiety laid aside, and of honorable social pleasure put on like a marriage garment. And what caused the difference between our ancestors and the Romans? Simply this: the error of interposing dinner in the middle of business, thus courting all the breezes of angry feeling that may happen to blow from the business yet to come, instead of finishing, absolutely closing, the account with the world's troubles before you sit down. That unhappy interpolation ruined all. Dinner was an ugly little parenthesis between 2 still uglier clauses of a teetotally ugly sentence. Whereas with us, their enlightened posterity, to whom they have the honor to be ancestors, dinner is a great reaction. There lies our conception of the matter. It grew out of the very excess of the evil. When business was moderate, dinner was allowed to divide and bisect it. When it swelled into the vast strife and agony, as thee may call it, that boils along the tortured streets of modern London or other capitals, men began to see the necessity of an adequate counterforce to push against this overwhelming torrent, and thus maintain the equilibrium. Were it not for the soft relief of a 6 o'clock dinner, the gentle manner succeeding to the boisterous hubbub of the day, the soft glowing lights, the wine, the intellectual conversation, life in London is now come to such a pass that in 2 years all nerves would sink before it. But for this periodic reaction, the modern business, which draws so cruelly on the brain and so little on the hands, would overthrow that organ in all but those of coarse organization. Dinner it is, meaning by dinner the whole complexity of attendant circumstances, which saves the modern brain-working men from going mad. End of Section 16. Dinner, Real and Reputed, Part 3, by Thomas De Quincey. Recorded by Robert Scott, June 30th, 2007.